Hey CE fam, we're so glad that you're here for CE Online. I can't wait to see what God's gonna do today. He always shows up in amazing ways. So if you got any questions, prayer requests, or just wanna connect with us, go to churchexperience.tv/connect or scan the QR code on the screen. And hey, while you're here, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on what God's doing through CE. We love you, we're praying for you, and we're so glad that you're part of the CE fam.
Turn the page. We are talking about changes and transitions in our life and how we navigate those very difficult times. Sometimes the changes are increased responsibility and we've been promoted into new and great things, but those changes carry new complexities. Sometimes the changes are things we would never have chosen, and yet we're trying to figure out how to navigate through those decisions, those new realities. Well, I'm very excited about the message today as we talk about the same God who's always been there and always will be there with us, even though things change and times change. So let's talk about turning the page. I got a question for you here as we begin. How many of you, by show of hands, I'd love everybody to participate, how many of you remember either you or your children growing out of their shoes rapidly? How many of you remember that? Come on, you remember, right? And some of you, you're in that stage, you're like, this is so expensive. I just bought them size 7 the other day, and now they're in size 8. But do you remember the test of knowing when it's time to change shoe size? Do you remember that? What was it? Right? They would feel the bottom of the tip of your toe, your shoe, and they would see if your toe is touching the edge of the shoe. And if it is, then it's time what? To get a new size, to get a bigger shoe, right? Because you have outgrown your current reality. You know, when we talk about change, it's not comfortable, but here's the cool thing about change. Change makes room for more. If you're taking notes today, maybe you want to write that down. Change makes room for more. More that God can do, more opportunities, new relationships. God can bring good even out of the bad. And so as we talk about change, I know we resist it. We don't like it generally. In fact, I heard someone say the only person that loves change is a baby with a dirty diaper, right? Because it gets us out of our familiar. It gets us out of our comfortable, and we have to stretch into something new and different. But there's a way to take advantage of those changes when we turn the page in life or in our career, our extended family, right? The season of life we're in, whether it's a graduation or retirement. God can use those seasons where things change, and He can help us discover and uncover some things about us and about His unchanging character. So let's talk about change for a minute. There's 3 types of change primarily. All right, 3 types of change, and if you're taking notes, by the way, I encourage you to take notes. Whether you use this weekly handout that we give you on your way in every week, I hope you'll use that, or you bring a journal, or you tap it into your phone. The reason why we want you to take notes is because it increases retention, which increases your application of the message, and application brings transformation in our lives. So I take notes. I love to take notes. I love to look at them later and remember the things that God has taught me. So if you are taking notes, I want you to write this down about change. There's things that change in us. It's the first type of change. It's the best kind of change, generally. We want to see our lives change. We want God to do something inside of us. So there's change in us. There's change by us, which is generally easier, right? It's when we initiate the change. But then there's change that happens to us, and this is the most difficult, right? This is the challenging sort of change because it's been imposed on us. Or life changed, our health changed, our finances changed. Something changed, and we did not choose it. And that's the case in Daniel chapter 6 today, as we're going to read from God's word, a story about Daniel, great man of God. When he was a teenager, the Jewish people, God's people, were exiled out of their nation. It was a consequence for their sin that God allowed. They were taken into the Babylonian kingdom by King Nebuchadnezzar. This was when Daniel was a teenager. He experienced this change. And then all throughout his life, now into where we're going to pick up the story somewhere we think around in his 80s, Daniel is now navigating a new change, right? The government has changed from the Babylonians to the Persians. He's under King Darius, who is the king of what we believe is kind of like a governor-ish of a region. And Daniel is now been elevated into leadership, and he's about to be put into a top-level leadership position. And that's going to bring new changes in his life, but it also brings out in his rivals, his peers, some envy. And so I want you to check out this story about change and what we can learn from it from Daniel chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." Which, by the way, let me just pause and ask you something. His enemies are looking into his life, trying to trip him up because they do not want him to be elevated in leadership over them. How hard would your enemy, your adversary, have to look into your life to find something in you that was negligent or corrupt? How much in your life lines up with the way God has asked you to live, and then how much of it lacks integrity? Your enemy, the devil, by the way, knows about all those weaknesses, and he tries to exploit them, right? And he tries to ruin your life with them. And God, he blesses those who live righteously, who honor him, who have integrity. And that's who Daniel is, and watch how God blesses him. Verse 6, so these administrators and satraps, they went as a group to the king, and they said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, the prefects, the satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. That's how they would execute someone. Verse 8, now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So that King Darius put the decree in writing. All right, so what's going on here? Well, this is the setup for what ultimately is going to be a great rescue that God accomplishes in Daniel's life, and he uses this that looks like a setup to actually, or a setback to actually set him up for this incredible opportunity for influence for God. It's going to be some amazing things that happen here. But I just want to pause and get the setting, right? So Daniel's adversaries, they go to the king, they appeal to his pride, and they say, hey, everybody agrees, everybody thinks that we should only pray to you. Right? Not to any other God, not to any other person, just to you, King. And he agrees with him. And I don't know how many of you guys have learned so far in life that when someone says, hey, everybody's doing it, or everybody thinks this, that's not always true. Of course, Daniel would have never agreed to this. He would never pray to anyone except the Lord his God. But the king, he acquiesces, he agrees, and he signs this agreement. It can't be repealed even by him. And so no one can pray to anyone else in the next 30 days or they'll be executed. And Daniel has a choice to make. Does he stop praying to his God? Does he go hide away and pray only in privacy? Or does he pray publicly as he's always done? We're going to look at his response here in a moment, but he's faced with a change, right? He's faced with new circumstances, new challenges. And some of you here in this new year, you are facing some new challenges in your life. What in your life has changed? As you talk about turn the page, what is new? What is different? What is changing? It might be like David, that you're being promoted into a better opportunity. There's new things. There's a new season. But that, again, has complexities to it that are different, that you're trying to figure out. Maybe there's something in your life that's changed that you would not have chosen. David would not have chosen to be in this foreign nation. David would not have chosen for his advisors to pass this law against him. But there he is. Things have changed, and how is he going to navigate those changes? I would love for you to write down this quote. Everything changes, not everyone grows. Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. When I came across that quote, I love it. Growth is optional. I've noticed, and maybe you've seen this in your peer group too, I've noticed that some people, when they're faced with changes, when they're faced with unexpected hardships, they shrink back, they compromise. Their character is watered down, their commitment is weakened, and they do not move forward. They take on a victim mentality. And they think, well, man, it's not fair. Why God? Why my boss is such a jerk, you know? And they will blame everybody and everything. But then there's some people. There's some people that rise to the challenge, that rise to the hardship. When the page turns, they actually rise and increase in their focus and their commitment. Look at what Daniel did in chapter 6. We just read it, verse 3. It said, he so distinguished himself by his exceptional qualities right? And it says that they looked in verse 4. They tried to find anything. It says they could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy, neither corrupt nor negligent. So I want you to really think about this. Maybe you're familiar with this Bible story before, but you've never really looked deeply into this. Think about Daniel. He's in a foreign nation. He wouldn't choose to be there. He's a captive. He has all these people against him. He wouldn't have chosen that. But it says he distinguished himself by the choices he made. And some people will just put in a half effort in their life, in their career, their ministry, their home, when they're discouraged, when they're overwhelmed, when maybe the odds are against them. But you know, not only is that not a way to get promoted, like you'll never get promoted at work if you're just putting in a half effort because you're saying, well, my boss is unfair. But it also is a huge statement to our world about who you are, your character, like how you do things. And more importantly, whose you are, your God's, right? So do you show up wherever you go, whatever you do? Do you show up and give your best? Like it says in Colossians 3, do you work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for people? Because look, you're not primarily there for a paycheck. You don't do what you do for another person. We do it for the Lord our God. We give everything because he's worthy of all things. And all things are unto him, and all things are from him. And so we give our best because we do it unto the Lord, right? And so Daniel, he's distinguishing himself, and he's setting himself apart. And if you're taking notes, write this down. Grow with the changes. Grow with the changes, right? Life is going to keep changing on you. And maybe in this new year, there's pretty smooth sailing, but you know, throughout the year, there's going to be changes. And you can resist them or you can grow with them. You can, again, growth is optional, so you can choose to grow with them. You can grow through them. You can become a better person. You can be closer to God. What if at the end of this year, you were closer and more dependent on Jesus than ever before? That's possible. And these changes in your life can be a tool to help you grow. Do you see them that way? Do you see the changes as problems to get through and survive? Or do you see them as opportunities, catalysts to launch you into growth? Daniel, he said, I'm gonna grow. I'm gonna set myself apart so I have more influence in this foreign kingdom. And he did, and God used him. So how did he respond? How did Daniel respond to the change? Take a look with me at verse 10. So they passed this law. It's official. You can't pray to anybody except this king. And in verse 10, it says, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and he prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. He got down on his knees and prayed, just as he had done before. So things are changing, but Daniel says, I'm not going to change. I know who I am. I know where I'm from. I'm committed to God. And even though other people around me have changed, even though my circumstances has changed, I'm not going to change. My 2 sons, they're 18 and 16, Jalen and Kylan. We're all basketball fans. One's a fan of Golden State Warriors, hoping Steph Curry gets another championship. The other is a fan of the Dallas Mavericks and the up-and-coming Cooper Flag. And so there's a little bit of rivalry in the household, which is fun. And at Christmas one year, we got these towels, these beach towels, that were like, one was like a Golden State Warriors towel, one was a Dallas Mavericks towel. So we have these in our garage whenever we need extra towels or we go to the beach or something, we have these towels. So it's interesting, you've had this in your house before. Every once in a while, one of my 4 kids will go take a shower, and they'll forget to check the cabinet to make sure that there's clean towels before they go in the shower, right? And then they get themselves in a big problem, right? Like they're finished with their shower, but there's no towel. And you'll just hear it ring out throughout the house. Somebody like yells out with the cracked door, hey, could somebody get me a towel? And you know exactly what happened, right? Like they're there and they're in a jam and they need someone to throw a towel in there. And so as soon as we got these new like basketball themed towels, like it happened instantly. Like one of the days, like one of my sons like yelled, I need a towel. And the other brother got up instinctively, went to the garage, got the towel of the opposing team that his brother didn't like, and he carries it back and he throws it in there. Hey, man, good luck. I can just imagine him there looking at this towel like, I have no other option, but I hate this. I do not want. And he wraps himself in it, comes out, and his brother's there video recording the whole thing. He's wrapped in something that he doesn't believe in. Maybe you're surrounded by a culture, an extended family, a workplace, a neighborhood, apartment complex, where there's a lot of people who believe differently than you. And you, like Daniel, find yourself surrounded. And you're the only believer there. You're the only one that's standing for Christ there. You're the only one that has character there. But listen, never forget who you are on the inside. No matter what you're going through, never forget who you are and whose you are. You know, it says Daniel got down on his knees to pray like he did before. And it says the windows opened toward Jerusalem. That was significant for him as a young Jewish man, now an older Jewish man. As he opened those windows and looked out towards Jerusalem when he was a teenager, right? He might have some memories of what used to be. And even though things were in ruin in comparison to how they were before, he still remembered where he's from, and he's praying toward Jerusalem. He's there on his knees. He's remembering the promises of God. He's remembering the people of God, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel, and this covenant promise that God made to use them to bless the world. And so he's remembering where he's from, even though he's somewhere else. How about you? When you go through it, do you forget your roots? Do you forget where you're from? Do you forget who you are? Some people, what they do is they'll change with the culture. They will change their values. They will change their beliefs, their convictions when things get hard. But look, he wasn't just looking towards Jerusalem, remembering what was. He was believing in faith as he prayed of what would be one day. He knew God's best was still coming. He knew that God's promises were still true, that God never gave up on him. Listen, you might feel like giving up on God because you're going through a hard time, but God will never give up on you, so don't give up on him. And I know that it's tough when things change around you like Daniel experienced. In fact, it's tough for Christians. And we don't even like to talk about this kind of stuff, but it's challenging, right? Because there's a culture around us, especially in the last couple decades, that has significantly changed. And there's now things that are celebrated that used to be taboo to even talk about. They're now honored. And maybe June's a tough year for you as a believer because in your workplace, they're like, hey, put this on your email, or we're going to fly this flag in front of our workplace. And you're like, man, it's conflict for me because I don't want to be against any group of people. Like, I love people. We're supposed to love, but biblical Christianity and historic Christianity, there's things that, man, they're saying this is wrong, this is sin, this is not what God supports, and yet it's supported by culture. And Daniel just, as an illustrative idea, he's in a similar context where everyone around him is going a different direction, and he's got a choice to pray, to respond, or to pull back, to hide out. And you have a response to in our culture. How are you going to respond? How are you going to stand up for your values when you're the only one in your extended family that believes? By the way, our extended church family, all 12 locations, every May, we're going to preemptively have a marriage and family series every year moving forward. I'm so excited about. Not bashing anybody, not what we're against, but what we're for. And here's the vision of what God has in mind when in marriage and family, one man, one woman together as companions for a life. And this is God's plan, his vision, and we're going to tuck in there. So how do you interact with culture when people think different than you and believe different? Look, we have always said all throughout church experience, anybody who walks through the door, we will love them right where they are. They might not believe the same, live the same. That's okay. We're going to love them to Jesus, but we are not going to water down and compromise our convictions and what we believe. We build on God's eternal word, his unchanging word, because he's the same God, yesterday, today, and forever. But we want to be loving in how we do it. And so we're going to approach that in May every year. And that's way out on the horizon. I just more wanted to mention that to us as a church family to say, look, how are you doing in your convictions? Are you letting the changing circumstances change you? If you're taking notes, I'd love for you to write this down. Don't let the changes change you. Don't let the changes change you. Is there any area in your character or your commitment to Christ that needs to be evaluated? Is there any area in your life, your commitment that has slipped? Is there any slippage in that you need to address here in this new season as you turn the page? I hope that you will be radically committed to honoring God no matter what goes on in your life, no matter what challenges you face. And as the chapter turns, the page turns, you move into a new season, trust that God, the same God that's always been there for you, always will be there for you. Right on?
What Pastor Brandon was saying there, I loved it how he started off with an analogy of the shoes, because I also thought of that analogy. It's when you're a kid and you've got your shoes and they get somehow, I don't know, it's like having a child. Suddenly they are small and then the next thing they are big. And you don't see them grow. You just suddenly like, hang on, how does that work? And I'm sure it's the same thing with shoes, right? One day they fit, the next day they're not painful, it's just a bit suspicious. You're thinking, how these used to fit? And if they're like your favorite shoes, you might think, well, it's not so bad. I'll just clench my toes a little bit and I'll force my foot in there and And then your parents will say those dreaded words. It's like, I think you've outgrown them. And you're devastated because you don't want to get rid of your favorite shoes, right? And so you convince yourself, no, they still work. You force yourself in them. You walk a bit slowly. It's a bit painful, but it's okay. But here's the funny part. There was nothing wrong with the shoes. You've just outgrown them. And that's tough. They just don't fit you anymore. And that's why transition is so, it feels exactly like that. Now, we've been on a journey with Joshua, and I want to continue that today. It's been beautiful to kind of walk this journey with him for the last couple of weeks, and we're only on like literally chapter 5, and there's still 24 more chapters. Well, there's 20, I don't know how many in total, so I hope you guys are comfortable. But I love the story of Joshua, and I love the similarities and some of the things that I've just been praying about this week with Joshua and with Daniel. Here's what I think about transition, about this turning the page. Transition is kind of God saying, like you've grown, but you're still trying to fit into what used to fit. You're still trying to live in what used to fit. And I really feel the sense this morning of this transition that He's allowing us and that He's processing us through, right? And often when transitions happen, the environment that you're in might feel tight. Your patience might be thin, right? Because you come in through a transition phase. Your frustration might be high, not because you're failing, but because you're growing. And here's the thing with the shoes is that they don't grow painful overnight. They just slowly become more and more uncomfortable. And that's what happens with transition. It's a bit uncomfortable. We don't like transition. It's uncomfortable, but it's not punishment. It's evidence of growth. And when I look at the story of Joshua was in a transition. Moses had gone. Daniel felt it. He felt transition when he gets to Babylon, and they change his name from Daniel. They're different situations, same tension. I wrote you that Joshua's like toe was touching on the edge of the wilderness. Daniel's faith was rubbing against the walls of exiles, and both of them had to make a decision. Do I stay where I'm no longer fit, or do I trust God into something new? And that's really been the theme that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, that if God is leading us, the unknown is not unsafe. And so when it comes to transitions, it shouldn't be scary, because if God is leading us, the unknown is not unsafe. If God is leading us. And transitions can be tough. They can be painful, but I know that if God is leading us, if God is leading me, the unknown is not unsafe. And so things can happen. And Joshua teaches us how to move forward when he changes our assignment. Joshua was, the oldest gone, you're up. Daniel teaches us how to stay faithful when he doesn't change our environment. Transitions doesn't mean that something is wrong. It often means that God is making room for growth. And when we think of transitions, they are really Instagrammable. Like, you're not going to go online and say, listen, day 47 of not hearing from God. I'm still waiting. It's not going to get many likes, right? The people are going to be like, shame. They're going to be like, let's move on, right, from that. Transitions are this weird space where the old is gone. The new, you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like, but you're in this space where you haven't really got there at the moment, and God feels quieter than you'd like to hope that He would be a bit more. Let's say you might think to yourself, I really thought obedience in transition, I really thought obedience would come with more clarity than this. If you've ever thought of that, well, congratulations, because you're normal. Often in transition periods, we think, I wish God would speak louder. I wish there would be more clarity. If you've ever thought of that, well then congratulations, because you're a human being and you have the same thoughts that we all do when we're going through transition periods, right? But Daniel and Joshua are two beautiful examples around how to stay faithful in those transition seasons. Different stories. Their stories are different. They're about 200 years apart. A different season, different scenarios, different settings, but same God and same trust. Transitions doesn't just test your ability, it exposes your trust in those transition periods. When I think of Joshua, his was a transition of responsibility. Joshua, the old is gone. He's been promoted, And if we're honest, sometimes promotions are terrifying. It starts off Moses, the guy who parted the seas, who spoke to God, who glowed on occasion after seeing God. He's gone. That's how the book of Joshua starts. It says, Moses, my servant, is dead. So he's gone, and Joshua has to take over. That's biblical language for saying, listen, the past season is done, you're up. Can you imagine that responsibility? This was the only leader that most of these people had ever known. He's dead now, and so you're in charge now. And so you're not just taking over leadership, you're taking over responsibility, you're taking over leadership and expectations. The people that have been wandered in the desert for so long, they're still grumbling, like we spoke about a few weeks ago. You have to cross a river that we spoke about, that you have to step into the water first. You've got all these things that needs to happen. And God doesn't say, you'll be ready. He doesn't say, you've got this. No, he says, be strong and courageous. And he says it 3 times because courage leaks. And last week we kind of explored that really interesting conversation that he has with the commander of the Lord's army, where Joshua says to him, are you for us or against us? And the commander, which I think is Jesus incarnate, says neither. Whew. Right? We think transitions is a time where God is with us, and this is my journey, my plan, my battle. And God's like, no, it's not your battle, it's mine. And so I need you to be I need you to consecrate yourself. I need you to be made holy. I need you to be set apart, because this is my battle. And I'm inviting you to be a part of it. And so that's why he says a few times, be strong and courageous, because our courage leaks, right? With transition periods where we're waiting, or we're in a season of delay. And so that's why he says, be strong and courageous. But, God is trying to remind us what fear tries to erase. Because when there's delays, it's tough, because we wish the outcome would come before the obedience. We wish the waters would part before we step into it, but God often does the reverse, right? Where he says, do you trust me? Well, do you trust me enough to step out in faith? Do you trust me enough to trust me in the transition? And so his was a transition of responsibility. At the same time, he's probably still grieving what's happened. His leader, Moses, is dead. He's come from another place. He's been wandered around most of his life. He's been in the wilderness, and now he's into a new season. And God wants us to honor the past without living there. Often we can live in the past. We can live in that hurt. We can live in that lesser version of ourselves. We can live in that part because we know it. It's comfortable for us. We don't like it, but it's what we know, and so we can live there. And I think with the season with Joshua, he's saying, don't live in the past. You can honor it. You can honor where you've come from, but don't live there. Excuse me. Daniel was different. I love Daniel. I love the story of Daniel. It's the same thing with Joshua. When we think of Joshua, we think of Jericho and the walls falling down. When we think of Daniel, we think of the lion's den. I love Daniel because he liked lions, and maybe he wants to go on safari one day in heaven. I don't know if there'll be safaris in heaven, but maybe him and I can get chased by lions together. His was a transition of environment. He was exiled. He was dragged. Joshua, transition was promotion. Daniel's was trauma. He didn't want to step into the new season. He was dragged into it. They were slaves. It's a long story, but they were slaves. They were taken captivity by the Babylonians. And so from Jerusalem to Babylon, from freedom to captivity, from worship to pressure. It's a new culture. It's a new name, new expectations. And Babylon didn't just want Daniel's talent. It wanted his identity. This morning, driving to church, I was listening to the song, and I was having a moment with God, and even as I got here, I just have the sense of God working something in us. And I also get nervous when I go off script a little bit, because I don't want to offend any people, but sometimes I think I just do it naturally, right? But I love this country. I really do. I've even got my patriotic shirt on today, because an American team is going to win the Super Bowl, so I'm going to celebrate whichever team wins. I am for Team Jesus. That's my number one. I actually don't care who you vote for. I don't care who you follow. It doesn't bother me. I couldn't care less. My thing is like, do you follow Jesus? There is going to be so much of this country that wants to take your identity, right? They'll want you to. I love this country, but I grieve it. I really grieve this country. I don't like to make a mountain out of a molehill, but just the environment. I hate that environment. I don't want that environment. Like I'm for Jesus, right? And I'm not going to be ignorant of it, but also I don't want to camp there, right? I don't want to camp there and say this is the worst thing ever, whatever that is, right? And then I don't want to be on this side and go, oh, it's not so bad. Like just get over it, because I know it's going to be again. There's always going to be something that's going to try and distract us, right? There's always going to be. There's always going to be this spiritual element to this country that we live in that will want us to have more that divides us than what unites us. That's why I'm for Team Jesus. And there might be things that offend you more than it should. There might be things that should grieve you more than it should. Whatever the case is, it's like I grieve for the things that grieve God. And listen, all it takes is something to say something, and then poof, it just goes like this, and it's a rabbit trail, and we end up going on these dark, scary places, and then we realize, oh wow, I don't have the mental capacity to go down these rabbit trails, because while we're still in this rabbit trail, hey, something else pops up, and it's exhausting. If I'm honest, it really is exhausting. Hey. Like a volcano, yes. It's exhausting. It's gonna, yeah. Yeah, goodness, eh? There is so much that I love about this country, and I want to focus on that. We have a beautiful country that we live in. I've got an American living in my home now, right? I love this country, and however that looks for you, can I tell you, go sit with Jesus, and can I tell you what the end result is you'll weep over this country, because there is a lot of people that need Jesus, and that could start at the top and at the bottom, and everyone in between. We need Jesus desperately, every single one of us, and I don't look at people and judge them, because when I sit with Jesus, I realize, I'm a sinner as well, and I need Jesus just as much. Alicia did a beautiful job with devotion this morning that said, what if someone followed you for 24 hours, would they see Jesus? Like, I was thinking, if someone followed me for 24 hours, would they know that I'm a pastor? I don't know. Would they be like, really? Like, are you a Christian? And I was like, I would hope people would, if people had to see my life, see like, yeah, he loves Jesus more than anyone else. The song I was listening to this morning is a song called Nothing Else. It's a worship song. I think we've sang it before. And it's really saying like, Jesus, nothing else matters. It's only you. And I'm like, can I say that with boldness? That nothing else matters. Not my family, not my job, not my friends, not my family, not this church. Nothing else matters other than him and me. Babylon wants Daniel's talent, not just his talent, it wanted his identity. But I love what it says in the beginning of Daniel chapter 1 verse 8. It says, but Daniel resolved in his heart that he would not defile himself. Joshua crossed the river, Daniel drew a line, right? He didn't make a speech, he didn't write a long Facebook status update, he didn't start a protest. No, he just decided before the pressure came who he was. He decided who he was before the pressure came, right? Because conviction decided in advance prevents compromise in the moment, right? We can decide we can live in Babylon, but not be part of it, right? We can decide that faithfulness is not loud, but it's consistent, right? And Daniel decided who he was before the pressure came, right? That's what happens in transition, right? When transition comes, the preparation that we've had will decide who we are going to be when transition comes. And can I tell you what? It will be like a hot lava mess if we don't, right? Like a little volcano. We'll explode, right? If we haven't decided who we are before the pressure comes, right? It's just going to be an absolute mess. I love the analogy of a volcano. That was a word right there, right? Transition is not permission to compromise, right? You've got the same God, the same strategy. This is where Joshua and Daniel collide. Mickey, you can come up. God didn't remove the pressure that they were in. He just reshapes their posture while they're in these seasons of transition, right? The different seasons of transition. One's been dragged out from their country to go to another place, and this new country wants to force them to be something else, but Daniel didn't want to do that. He didn't want to defile himself, and so he wanted to be this light in this darkness, right? That was Daniel, and Joshua was a different transition. He was the new leader, and God had told him, Moses is gone. It's a new season, and so you've got these two different beautiful stories, but the same God. God is interested about the journey that you're on, but He's also most interested in who you are going to become on that journey. I've had people say to me, Warren, it's just me and Jesus, and I can't handle people around me without. It's like, yeah, but God's a God of community, and He wants us to be a community that going together to where He's want us to go. And let's be honest, we want the Joshua level results with the Daniel level risk management. We want God to say to us, step forward, and I'll explain everything, except God says step forward, and then I'll show you. Take that step into the water. We want God to say, Lord, open the Jordan, and God will say, yeah, but put your foot in the water first. We might say, God, please remove Babylon, and God will say, stay faithful in it. We want the walls to fall like Joshua without ever risking like the lion's den. We crave breakthrough, but we negotiate the cost. We want faith that wins publicly and obedience that costs privately. Faith isn't knowing the outcome, it's knowing the leader, right? And if Jesus is leading us, if God is leading us, the unknown is not unsafe, right? Joshua leads a people into a land they didn't earn, and Daniel points to a faith that survives exile, and both point to Jesus. The greater Joshua who leads us into true rest, the faithful son who entered exile, rejection, and suffering and entrusted his Father fully. And so some of us are maybe on the edge of the Jordan River. And God is asking us to trust Him as we step over and step in faith, to trust Him, even though it feels risky. And some of us, we might be in Babylon, where God is calling us to stand firm, even though compromise feels easier. Different transitions, but same invitation. We trust God here. We obey God now because He's already into the next season. Because if God is leading you, the unknown is not unsafe. And so, like I mentioned last week, sometimes we want a 5-step plan from God, but God wants us barefoot. And so take off your shoes and trust Him, because He's already got the next season of growth in store for you. But there's a season of transition that's happening before then. So can we stand together? I just have this sense. I have this real sense that the Holy Spirit is here with us. I have the sense that there are people that are in a transition phase, and maybe it's like the Jordan River that we've been speaking about the last few weeks. And maybe it's like Babylon, where this world is trying to shape us into something that we're not. I love what Joshua says at the end of his life. He says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Lord, as for me and my house, as for me and this church, this is your house, we will serve you. We're not going to be, we're not going to allow this world to dictate who we are. I want to be shaped. I want to be shaped in the image of you, Jesus, where when people see me, they see you through me. Where people see me, where they see us, where they see this church, they see that's a place where Jesus is known. That's the place where God dwells. This is his place. This is his land. This is holy ground. I just have that sense this morning that, Lord, this place is yours. We are yours. And however transition we're going through, Lord, we trust you. Because if you are leading us, the unknown is not unsafe. And so whatever we're going to navigate, whether it's our identity, whether it's our faith, whether it's stepping out and trusting you, whether it's whatever that is, it's not unsafe. I can't think of another journey that I would rather be on than a journey following Jesus. Even if it's unknown, even if it's risky, even if I have to sacrifice everything to be on that journey. That's the journey that I want to be on. That's the journey I want to invite all of us onto. It's the most beautiful journey. That we get to be on. And so there's the invitation this morning. Just accept him in. And say, yes, Jesus, that's the journey I want to go on. That's the journey I want to be on. I know it's going to be costly. I know I'm going to have to die to myself. I know that there's going to be transitions. I know that you're going to ask me to step out in faith and trust you. I know that, but I know that if you're leading me, the unknown is not unsafe, and so I trust you. And so, Jesus, even as we sing a song in response, Holy Spirit, I pray that you will speak to us. I pray that you will minister to us. I pray that even as we sing, there might be things in our soul, Lord, that needs to change. There needs to be maybe a step of obedience. Maybe we've been compromising, and we have to stop compromising, whatever it is. Holy Spirit, speak to us and minister to us. It's for your glory. Amen.
Before our usher team comes forward to receive our tithes and offerings and response cards, here's a few important things happening with our CE family.
Our app makes it so easy to stay connected throughout the week. From upcoming events and messages to groups, serving, and giving, everything you need is right at your fingertips. It's one of the more ways that we help our CE family stay connected and engaged. So don't forget to turn on your notifications for the CE app as we send occasional brief updates that you don't want to miss, so download it today. As our ushers come forward to collect our response cards and receive our tithes and offerings, as a church family, we get to celebrate so much life change. We're seeing lives transformed through our life groups, baptisms, serving, the message, and so much more. Hearing people share their stories and how they began their relationship with Jesus throughout these moments is amazing. When you give, you're investing in something far greater than you can see. That life group that changed someone's life, that moment of surrender, that next step of faith happens because of your faithful generosity. So when you set up recurring giving online, you help so many people experience a full life in Jesus.
Thank you for being on mission with us to help more people experience a full life in Jesus Christ.
Wow, what an incredible service today. If you made the commitment during the service, we would love to celebrate with you. So head over to churchexperience.tv/connect or scan that QR code. And don't forget to stay connected with us all week long on Instagram, Facebook, on our website, or the CE app. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next Sunday. Same place, same family, new move of God. Have an awesome week.